Good evening. Today we have the first roundtable in our series AI at Work, which the Hindu group is presenting in association with IBM. Our first topic is data without chaos, laying the foundations for AI. I'm very happy to welcome the group here. We'll have people introduce themselves in a quick round robin here. Let's start with Lakshmi.
Yeah. Hey, hi, I'm Lakshminarayan. I head product management and design at Myntra. Very excited to be here.
Hello everyone, my name is Dipesh Shah. I am CTO at Havells India Limited.
Hello, I am Sudhir Kumar, Managing Director at Petronet MHB Limited, which is a petroleum product pipeline company.
Hello, this is Vinoth. I lead the data and AI practice for IBM India.
Hello, I'm Harish. I'm Senior VP Engineering at ACKO Technologies, built the health and life business, and now I lead software and infra architecture at ACKO.
Hi, good evening everyone. My name is Siddhesh. I lead the data and AI software business for IBM India. Hi, I'm Pranjal. I lead the data science and ML vertical at Udaan. It's a B2B e-commerce platform.
Hey, hello, I'm Suresh Vijayan. I'm the CTO for the Hindu group.
Hi, I'm Sandhya Kapoor and I'm Senior Vice President at leading the Central Platform Group at Flipkart.
Hi, I'm Pavan. I'm an Associate Director with Great Learning. I lead all our AI Data Science Masters teaching programs.
Super. This is a very nice mix of executives. We have technologists, infrastructure people, pedagogues who will speak about how they educate people on AI and so on. We have practitioners, we have strategists, we have advisors, we have consultants. So I hope to have a very productive and a very learning experience today for all of us. So as you know, today's topic is data without chaos, and one of the experiences that we ourselves have had in the media industry, and even if I were to start with the Hindu group, for example, we are 146 years old, we are on our 147th year. We'll be 147 in just a couple of months actually. I remember that in 2003, as we were running up to our 125th anniversary, is when we were able to wrangle a budget for digitizing our archives. Now, going by the normal way in which this used to operate, and again, of course, I'm talking about 3 or 4 generations back when I'm talking about 2003, right? And if we went and asked for a big budget to digitize our archives just like that, it never have come, but we were able to do something only because we were able to tag it to, oh, for the 125th year, we're gonna do special supplements, we're gonna bring out new products, additional products, more pages, we're gonna talk about the history of the company, we're gonna talk about how much we've been part of the fabric of India, so to speak. And all of that sort of combined to get us that budget to do this digitization. And a large part of where we are today in terms of the data that we have, so to speak, about our own product, our content, the foundation was that project. As depending on your point of view, as late as 2003 or as early as 2003, right? So there is no doubt that AI needs data. In the classical AI systems, you need data that is clean, that you have lineage, that you have all kinds of governance set on it. And because unstructured data that we use for generative AI, and we treated generative AI like a toy, perhaps for the first 1 year it was around, because we tried to do everything that we could possibly do with it. We probably did not have the same rigor in terms of how clean is that data at that time. But obviously, it's become serious now. There are entire businesses that now run out of generative AI-based systems. And talking about unstructured data is also important for us. So today we're going to cover both types of data. We'll largely focus on structured data, but we will also talk about unstructured data. So as you can sort of see now, my first question is going to be about what does AI ready mean in terms of our data? And one of the first questions that occurs naturally, obviously, is what are the top indicators that whether your enterprise data is AI ready or not? I'm going to ask Sandhya to chime in first.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, AI readiness pertaining to data comes from various angles. One, obviously, the data has to be clean, standardized. It has to have the lineage associated with it. Then, alongside, there has to be the correct tagging of that data so that we can point out what features this data is going to be used for, how it is going to apply in our classical and generative AI models. And it has to have the correct knowledge set into it. And by that, I mean that if we are trying to predict a customer's behavior, or we are trying to forecast how this customer is going to behave for us, we need to know at a certain frequency how the behavior of that customer is changing. And for that, we need to capture the data at that frequency and with all of those attributes. So on one end is the cleanliness, the organization of the data. On the other end is what are the attributes and functional characteristics of this data. So both of them make it AI ready.
Super, thank you. Dipesh, how about your experience? What are the signals that you look for your data being AI ready?
In my experience earlier, when I was at Samsung, it was providing AI as part of the product to the consumer for their lifestyle improvement. Now in Havells, it is solving for business processes. So it depends on what problem you are trying to solve with AI. Are you solving for business? Are you solving for customers, for channel, for manufacturing? So that will define what data is meaningful for that. Otherwise, there's lots and lots of data anyway in any organization. Once the problem is decided, let's say, are we doing in technical terms, are we doing classification? Are we doing regression? Are we estimating? Are we predicting? Are we generating? So depending on that, also you can figure out whether what data is ready for which purpose are you doing. So problem and then the solution, that will decide what data we have to pick up to solve that problem using this particular algorithm. And for that, of course, after that, whatever Sandhya said, tagging, structure, time is very critical. Most of the data is just lying there for years, and then it might actually help you predict, something wrong. So what's the timeline of the data becomes very, very critical. Sometimes engineers miss that point. Like if data is there, they'll start using it. So having tag, having timeline, what algorithm am I using for that algorithm? Is this data meaningful? Is this a time series data or a sequence data? There are a lot of technicalities also associated with choosing the right data point.
Thank you. Harish?
Yeah. Roughly about 3-4 metrics is what we should look at. Number one, or the most important thing, is currentness of the data. For example, in insurance from ACKO, a customer, when he or she bought a policy, would have told he or she is not married. 2 years down the line, they get married. Somewhere that information comes to us either via a change in the policy or etc. So when the customer comes to us and is going through, let's say, a chatbot interface, I need to know that the policy data is stale, probably, but then the consumer's latest data is something very different. So the currentness of the data or the freshness of the data, that is a key metric for all generative UI cases, right? Because when the customer is interacting with you, he or she would expect the system to know about them correctly. That is one metric. The second metric is in tech we call it deduping, basically the non-duplicateness of the data, right? Like for example, your employer could have bought a policy from us through your employee channel, and you could have also bought a policy from us through your own channel. Your PIN code given by the employer could be something different, you could have told something different. How do I ensure that I'm sort of, for example, getting the right information, right? How do I deduplicate the consumer across my different data sources? It also leads into, multi-sources of data or centralization as people call it, but deduplication or the quality or the amount of deduplication probably is the second, most important metric that we have, right? The third sometimes is multimodal, meaning there's structured data coming in via your app, website, etc. Then people calling into call centers, they give you some information. It's mostly unstructured data, right? Somebody is saying, hey, you know what, probably a medical history says something else, but in the call center he would have said, I had an accident, 3 months ago, something happened along with me, right? There's unstructured data coming in via the call centers, different mode, but then, getting that together and ensuring that the correctness of it. So that is the third, the multimodal correctness of the data is the third, probably the most important. And leading to this is the health of your pipelines. Meaning to say, when the system pipelines are built into different systems collecting the data, how healthy they are in getting it, centralizing it, churning it, creating the various level of facts, L0, L1, L2 as we call it, to ensure that when the generative UI or even a traditional ML model UI use cases are run, the systems are feeding in the right data. So system robustness, if you can ask me, metric A. In terms of importance, again I would say deduping, currency of the freshness of data, and centralization multimodal. These I think are 3-4 key that we use today at ACKO to ensure that customers find the right interaction with us. Data for the sake of data is useless unless the customer says, yes, I interacted with your system and I got what I want. So these are 3 or 4, maybe there are a couple of more which are like how good is the team skill in organizing, but the more secondary. But these 3 or 4 in my mind are the most primary metrics that we should watch for.
Suresh, in my introduction, I spoke a little bit about our archives and so on. What is your view on your signals that you read for is enterprise data AI ready?
See, systems have evolved over time, right? So you spoke about 2003 when we started the digitization project, but actually 1992 we started doing pages on the computer. So that's when data actually started becoming digital. Before that it was manual, right? But today when you look at data that you're going to use for AI, this data has evolved over multiple systems. So even if you take as the characteristics of the data that you explained, that is there on the last 2 years version of the system versus that was there on the same system which was 10 years before, they are not the same. So when you are trying to build this and to use it for even before generative AI, we had challenges when you use it even for an AI ML part. You said your data sets, the feature set is inconsistent over different decades. So to clean that up and make sure that something I have in the last 10 years of data, but that specific information is not there in the previous 10 years. Whether I can generate that or I need to compensate for that or handle that in the whole process. That's something that that was a challenge for us when we took at our 150 years of archive. The content that we have in 1878 versus content that is generated yesterday, the whole metadata structure is different. So when I want to use that for generative AI, even for AI/ML, I need to handle all these things, which I guess in lots of manufacturing sector, they have the same challenge. The machines that generated data that was there 25 years back and the machines that generate data today, they have a different data set altogether, different capabilities. So they need to, when they want to use this huge amount of data, they have to ensure that this is correct. So in one word, data is gold, but there's also glass inside. You must be able to isolate the glass and use the gold alone.
This segues very nicely into my next question. As we saw from the different kinds of answers that we got for the first question, where we are from, who we are, and what role we play in the organization kind of defines what AI ready means for each of us. And therefore, my next question is, how do you align technical and business stakeholders on what usable data actually means? Sudhir, you would like to start?
Thank you for the question. Since I come from a non-technical background, I would rather look at the practical aspects of, getting approvals and implementing AI ML models into our system. So we are currently in the process of developing and implementing this AI ML systems. And coming to the business and the tech people in the company, I feel that both have the same objective but different routes. So the business guys are looking at things which you were discussing earlier, like what is the ROI, what is wrong with the current BAU, why you want to go there, do we really have a case? are you trying to just keep up with the Joneses? You just want to have AI/ML because everybody has it.
Correct.
So then it is difficult to explain. The tech guy says that without this you are not going to survive in the near future, because that's how you will use all your data in a meaningful format for strategic decision making as well as operational purposes. Since our industry is basically a sort of manufacturing industry, we are hardcore engineers all the way from bottom till top. So we really have some amount of doubts in what AI/ML will do, and the speed with which all this AI space is growing creates more confusion. You try to learn something, and then next day there is something else. You have Claude, you have Mistral, you have this, you have ChatGPT. So it confuses the end user that even if I make myself adept in this, will it survive for the next 6 months? So we do have a challenge, but yes, everybody reluctantly or willingly does agree that something has to be done about it.
Right.
So let us start somewhere, and maybe we can stop if we feel that it's not giving us the required benefit, if not financial, even operational, and then we will have some mid-course correction. But there is no doubt that both the groups are aligned to move forward on this path. They still are not very pally with each other, but still it's working. It's still working.
That's a nice recollection. Lakshminarayan, how about you? What's your experience been in aligning business stakeholders and
Yeah,
technical
so
stakeholders?
I think at the surface, if you take at say a 30,000 feet level, everyone, especially also business, has a lot of optimism on what all things can be changed with AI. But as soon as you start going deeper, then it starts getting very messy, and then how to orchestrate, what will it actually mean? Because there is also some level of say anxiety on what is this eventually going to lead to. No one is able to visualize exactly what it is. In some sense, the way we are at least trying to see it is that usable data or not is very contextual. It might not be. I don't think each of our data systems, if you were to put it out into different places, are at the same level of maturity to be able to say bring it to bear for being AI ready, or to be able to then say have multiple NLP or say LLM models pass through the data and then be able to work on it. Each system has very different levels of maturity. Even as we try to prepare readiness, I think it will vary, because there is again a prioritization that we need to do on where are places that you will want to invest upfront, because the value that you can derive out of it being AI ready might be a lot more other than say, or instead of looking at entire org becoming AI ready, because like he was also pointing out, there are many cases where what you're trying to do today, it's evolving very fast, because of which you might not be, you don't want to commit saying that I think the era of saying that there is a 3-year, 5-year strategy that we are trying to put together on some of this is sort of gone. So it helps to be a lot more nimble. The other part on usable data that we are also seeing is that there are many cases where actually we are able to use, say, LLMs or Gen AI models to enrich the data as well. It is not only about, say, what data that exists today is usable, but say, for instance, if you were to look at search systems, typically you will find that a lot of these are very heavily dependent on whatever is the taxonomy of the catalog or whatever is coming through. Or even if you were to say, take specific recommendation systems or any of those things, for any platform, if you were to look at it, the taxonomy in which it is coming through is very important to be able to decide what is what. Now, in many of those cases, you might not have rich data through and through. How do you use reactively, say, any of these technologies to actually enrich the data, especially in places where you might not need to be 100% precise?
Right.
In many of those cases, we are also using this to make data more usable than what its current form is. So I think there are various levels at which we are looking at when it comes to current usability of data, where we want to invest, as well as how do you use LLMs to make the data more usable. So
Yeah, that's a very nuanced view, Lakshminarayan. Sandhya?
Yeah, sure. So, as we have been discussing, the businesses are really keen. They hear the magic of generative AI, especially, and they are keen to see how it can benefit. So, there are, of course, proposals and the what's of doing things discussed, and then it comes to the technical stakeholders who look into under the hood of how we are going to achieve this. And there is always a healthy discussion, and in between you would also have the product teams who are trying to create their specifications, requirements, and nail it down to a more organized level of information that with respect to the objectives that we are going after. So there is always this healthy conversation and sometimes conflicts too. But more importantly, the point is that it's, even though generative AI is really transformed how we are leveraging machine learning and going into creating our own data from itself, there is always the rigor of making sure that the features that we are feeding into, whether they are LLMs or large or small language models, the rigor of how we are feeding in the information and what we are getting out of it. So there is that rigor of evaluating the accuracy and the explainability and the transparency of what the generative AI is giving us. So that is where the conversation even gets more intricate between business and technical stakeholders. How do we explain what we have done?
Thank you. So we saw one of the key things that we saw now is how data, whether it's usable or not, it's not like a monolithic thing. We have multiple systems. Different systems are at different levels of maturity, and so that obviously begs the question: how are you modernizing your data stack to support both classical and generative AI use cases? Lakshminarayan started off on it already, but this time I will ask Pranjal to
So
chime
I
in.
think it's a journey, and we have been through that journey, like the previous era, right? When it was everything about ML, and now it's all about Gen AI. What we started with is like having a centralized data platform, where you can host most of the data. You can tell the engineers to instrument whatever pipelines are there across the app, across all the products, right? Right from warehouse to last mile app to buyer app, right? Getting everything in place, and the data platform supports all the ETLs, complex ETL pipeline, whether it's an unstructured data, it's an unstructured data, images, audio, whatever, right? Now, that phase enabled us to use a lot of those classical ML models to do bunch of predictive stuff, forecasting, and what so on, right? Then the era of Gen AI came, and then the basic problem which came is like, how do we provide a metadata? Because Gen AI, like the LLMs in general, are context, like they want more and more context, right? They're under for context, and we did not have the discoverability in our data. I mean, you don't have the proper data catalog, and that is the phase two when we enable data catalog at the data platform level, right? And this data catalog is nothing but more like a metadata across at least your core data pipelines, which enables LLMs to get the context, and then your all the downstream models, even the basic analytics, right, can be done on top of that. I mean, it becomes an enabler for whichever LLM you are using. Parallelly, we also introduced something called like an ML platform, which works in conjunction with a data platform, and which enables any ML person or an engineer, right, to deploy the models to to get the relevant metadata as well as get the relevant features, right? Which is basically which makes your the central data platform ML ready. So that's how we have gone through that transformation, and I'm pretty sure there will be phase three because this place is not stopping.
Yeah, true. Dipesh?
Very similar to his views that foundation layer, then middleware where all the algorithms are sitting, and then more part of the organization are writing apps using this middleware that you provided and the data that you provided. That's typically the stack. But every company has different holes big or size, big or small, are different places. And when you see from top to bottom, there's always one hole that's like holding up. You're not able to get the whole app through. So the whole journey is, pick up the holes that are most important to fix right now. Fix that and move on. Don't expect any of these, even though we can see it as layers, none of the layers are always anytime complete to build something on top of it. So the traditional hierarchical approach, even though we can use it as an analogy, but it's never that. It's just bunch of holes and you tie a thread through them and solve one problem and keep moving. So, but because we're not comfortable viewing things like that, because mentally we are not prepared to see just the chaos everywhere, we tend to see it in a structured manner. But inside that, only the technologists who work there know that what goes on.
True, true, true. Pavan?
So similar. So I'll probably synthesize a couple of things. One is my own practice of working actually on this is a very real problem that a lot of people come to us for as our enterprise training partner. They ask us exactly a similar question. We have been doing classical ML so well for so long. Relational databases is what we run on. Manufacturing businesses are like typically steeped into this. And then they have this question, okay, now GenAI seems to be doing so much. So can I have my relational database the way it is, and can you sprinkle some magic on top? And then, rather than somebody sending a report request to an IT team and they're doing something, and then it gets published, can they directly work with that data? So the problem they don't understand is that all the data that was used so far, it was built for analysts. It's never built for these newer systems which are less than 2 year old, which is a very, very similar thread which happened. It's not a new problem at all. When the first time SQL systems came in, there was something before that, and we had a problem transitioning from that to this. So when the expectation that people have because of this whole hype around GenAI especially is magically it's going to weave this narrative on top of whatever you have, however messy it is, and that's the reality of it. Across many enterprises that we have worked with, nobody has come to us and told us that we have this squeaky clean data set, and all you need to do is train our people on generative AI, and they'll be off to the races. That has never happened, not even a single instance. So in one sense, that to have that expectation itself is sort of is incorrect. What instead should happen is when you have teams which are very well aware that this is not like a magic bullet for everything. These are completely two different things, and like it came up before, it needs ground up again working on legacy data systems so that they are now ready for this. One biggest roadblock here, which he brought out really well, was people actually are not sure what is the next thing that's going to come across to the horizon. A year ago, it was all about building question answering systems on top of your the data that you have. Whether questions that customers are asking, insurance companies, their customers are asking questions about policies and things like that, or internal analysts asking questions on data that you already have. Now suddenly you have agents, and it's like a completely different thing that we need to be like, now what do I invest in? Do I invest in upgrading my legacy systems to do question answering? Do I build agents? So what is ending up happening is, because of the large hype around it, we need to cut across this clutter and say this is going to be a journey worth going, but we shouldn't jump into it thinking that it's just a sprinkle of some magic and it's going to solve everything. That's the biggest stumbling block to this journey.
Sandhya?
Yeah, so it is a journey of transformation, and again taking some of the examples, starting what is the latest, and then marrying it to your own realities in the organization is the most pragmatic way that many organizations are handling it. For example, we have the agentic platforms these days. So instead of creating just simple chatbots, use the agents who can just orchestrate the entire workflow for you. And then, of course, you have to have the data in the right order, in the right place, with the correct pipelines. You have to have your databases giving you the information correctly. So it has to be married to the legacy and the new systems that you have all along. But why not start at the very forefront of what is there? Because figuring out that the landscape is changing so fast, as you were alluding to. So start with the latest.
Um, so, Siddhesh, you must be meeting a lot of CXOs, particularly CTOs, CIOs, in your field work with IBM. What are the strategies that are helping companies unify their siloed data sources?
So one of the approaches that most enterprises have got to, and Dipesh, you were bang on when you said the whole approach is I have some aspects of it. I need to plug a bunch of holes to get me to the next level. And it starts in a modular approach, Nagaraj, in terms of, for example, it starts from my pipeline observability. I need to figure out what's failing and how do I get to the right level and go fix it. It becomes one approach. The second approach comes in on I've got to create a AI ready data foundation, so I'm creating a lake house. How do I create a robust system that's going to scale to the level I need to get to? Do I have the level of performance matrix that I need to get to? The next aspect that comes in is the data governance piece that everybody spoke about. How do I have an end-to-end data governance?
Right.
Again, you're not going to bring anything and everything into the lake house. So you need a data governance story, which is an end-to-end data governance story. Something that eventually helps you lower the center of gravity, eventually helps you create an ability to have data as a service. And the debate that we spoke about between technical and business, the business would ideally want to have data as a self-service ability, and how do I go consume that data in the form that I need to. And the technical's job is how do I ensure I have all of it protected, governed, the policies enforced, the whole metadata tagging so that it can be consumed in the right fashion. The other aspect that comes in is, Sandhya, you spoke about this, which is the lineage aspect. The whole transformation right from the source to the consumption layer. Again, not something that can be restricted to the lakehouse layer, but from the source right up to the consumption layer. How do I trace back the origin of data? The interdependencies that exist as you drive transformations, you need to understand those interdependencies. A few more aspects that we've seen large enterprises get into, and I think many of you touched upon it, is the aspect of when I talk of GenAI, what's happening is the LLM, the enterprise content in the LLM, even in a RAG kind of use case, is very, very minuscule. So one of the approaches that's coming in is how do I start with a trusted LLM? It could be a small LLM where you start with. You bring in your enterprise data. For example, let's say a bank who's bringing its retail banking data onto the. You're now doing what you call as, and you alluded to this in some form or the other. How do I now do knowledge abstracts and skill abstracts, based on which I'm going to generate a ton of synthetic data on top of it. Now, this is in turn going to create an LLM with a significant contribution of your enterprise data that represents the LLM. And over time, as you keep fine-tuning it, it's really going to be a representative of your enterprise data. And how do I start? A lot of large enterprises have started on this journey. I would say early days, but something that's really catching on now. In fact, a bunch of GCCs right here out of India have started attempting this approach on creating an LLM which represents their particular division. So that's the other aspects, and it's building on what you spoke about. The next piece is coming in and evolving into is people are getting into data as a product offering. So how do I create a marketplace for that data, and do a lot more on how that data can be consumed. So a lot of thought is going on to the consumption side of the data as well. So I think those are the few points that could not cover.
Harish, I think a lot of what Siddhesh was saying, I was able to, because he gave the example of BFSI, I could almost immediately connect it to ACKO and, data as a service, data as a product. the kind of alliances and strategic partners that you find because of the data that you already have and so on. So what's your take on this?
So, yeah, I mean, when we say siloed data or providing data, I mean, they're two very different topics, right? As an insurer, I don't think we ever will give our data to anybody else. We're not allowed to and will not, right? So that's for sure. So maybe we'll consume data from somewhere else, maybe consumer data outside, but probably as a producer, we probably will never be there, right? But when you look at silo data, I think the word silo comes from, it's very historical. So let's say there are 3 generations of data, right? There's an older, AS400 data sitting somewhere else. Credit card companies, by the way, have AS400s in which data is sitting in, right? In this middle tier, the 2000s companies which relatively have data in their oracles or, the typical, DB2s, for example, mostly relational data. There's all structured data, meaning form data getting in. The form data is already in the form of an entity, meaning people understand what that particular key value pair means, right? Then the new age data, as we call it, essentially in the older Hadoop days, we used to call them 3 Vs, basically volume, variety, and velocity. So if you connect the app, for example, Flipkart app, and by the way, I was part of Flipkart a long time ago. So we were working on the Flipkart's older data platform. We used to generate a lot of gigabytes of data in a few minutes, right? There's a lot of volume of data coming in. There's no way to structure it. So we used to call it eat it all, meaning the data comes in, just keep eating it. Store, then figure out what to do. So if you look at it, there are 3 different paradigms of data storage, right? The older data storage, the middle tier data storage, relational, and the third is just get in, store somewhere. Older used to be HDFS, now it's S3, whatever, depending on what technology you use, right? Then the core of this is the entity model, as we call it. What does this data mean has to be understood across. It doesn't matter how it is stored. So the key in bringing silos is to decouple technology from data model or the understanding. It could be stored as A, as B, as Z, doesn't matter. But do we understand what it is, right? The moment you get to that, now that is got in multiple ways. Some people call it data laking, some people call it something else. It doesn't matter what you call, but as long as you have the right data model understanding, then data starts making sense to you, right? Irrespective of how it is stored, what technology generation was it in, etc. Now there are 2 or 3 consumers of this. One is your traditional ML models, where you get in, do feature engineering, do this, do that, etc. Right? The second, of course, is new LLM or the Gen AI, as we call it. And there are 2 parts. One is inference data, where you get meaning out of it. Right? The second is, of course, is people are training their own models. They don't know who else is doing it. Maybe many people are doing it. We do it for smaller models. Like today, there's no LLM that understands medical words very well. If you ask ChatGPT a very specific medical term, it doesn't know it. It's not been trained on it. There isn't enough articles to understand it. So we take a smaller model, we train it, etc. The generation has to be very clean, right? I mean, I cannot get an R30 and something else confused, when I'm doing inference on top of it, right? So that siloness is broken down, in my view, at an abstraction layer where we call it the data modeling layer, right? The moment you get the data modeling layer, you combine everything together and you separate tech. Today, this technology A. It used to be Spark some years ago. We did everything in Spark pipelines, right? Today, it is something else. So the key way to sort of come out of this generational problem, all this hodgepodge, is to separate out the technology layers, focus on the model, focus on what the entity means. Some part of it I would call governance, but governance is a fairly misused term, everywhere else. Governance just means, do everybody in the company across all systems understand horse for a horse? That's all. That's compliance, right? I mean, that's just governance. Beyond that, everything else is just, I'm assuming, mumbo jumbo, right? So the moment you understand that, you're able to model it very well. Tech keeps on changing. You implement newer data pipelines, you implement newer models, implement storage mechanisms, right? I mean, EMR older days was very easy. Now you can do EMR on file systems. So tech is moving, but as long as you have eaten everything, you have stored everything. And today, in agentic systems, like I was saying, it's possible for us to write an MCP server on an RDS, on an RDBMS database, right? It will give you whatever you want, connect them together, and you build your system. This will change. If we do this conversation next year, I'm quite sure I have a different answer. All of us will have different answers, right? So the key that is going to be there is what the data meant. It meant the same thing 200 years ago. It will mean the same thing about 100 years ago. So as long as you're able to separate them out, and don't look at silo as silo. Silo is just another way, just generationally the data has been there. A lot of it is traditional in companies, right? Team A took a decision to put it like this. Team B is working on clickstream. They have to, right, put somewhere else. Team C is doing scooping data from call centers and putting somewhere else. If you call them silos, fair, but in my mind, they're not just silos. They're just different formats in the data is landing on your systems. Combine them to the data model layer, I think we can build systems that are fairly useful and they will stand the test of time until something very fundamental changes, right? And I don't think that is anyway going to happen, right?
Thank you. That's a very interesting view.
Can I just add?
Yes, please, Siddhesh.
One of the aspects that we've been seeing, especially in the regulated, the banking industry, the insurance industry, is the ad hoc queries that come in from the regulator. And not all of it is there in your lake house. So now you've got to figure a way out on how do I go pick that. So one of the aspects that's really picked up over the last few years is the whole data fabric, the ability to have data virtualization without physically moving data, your ability to query the whole piece without bringing all of it into the not something that would be used on a very regular day-to-day basis, but in terms of addressing some of the statutory, regulatory ad hoc queries that come.
Yeah, public digital infrastructure, as we call it, PDI in India, is evolving very, very quickly. The regulator 10 years ago would be okay if you sent a report of last year. But now the regulators want it on a daily basis. They are also catching up, which is very good, by the way, because it's good for us because I can consume another insurer's data and find out if this person is a fraud or not. But to do that is very right. The requirements from the regulators, government, even the ecosystem, for example, KYC data, how latest is it, right? So that is evolving very quickly. So getting the right data across multiple generations of storage, probably data moving is very expensive. Anybody who's done cloud here knows, your bill will just go, I don't know, 50 times if you just get it from GCP into AWS. You're done. Half your budget is consumed, and you have not done even a single query on top of it.
Ingress and
You just moved houses from A to B. Nothing against GCP or AWS, by the way. But then the point being, cloud provider A to cloud provider B, if I can generalize it, right? So you need to be very smart. The right way to put it is figure out what data lies where and how not to get the whole bus to get what you're looking at it, right? And cost balancing has to happen. Business has to run.
Sudhir.
I have a totally different point of view, like whether it's structured or unstructured, old or latest data. But my requirement is that the techies tell us how to pick it up. They should not question me that your data is lying in Excel files, or your data is in the registers, or your data is in SAP, because this same thing, if an analogy is given, when all the companies started transitioning to SAP, ERP systems and all, the same chaos was there, that you have multiple systems, we don't know how to bring it. But then those vendors started working on the problem, and they helped the organizations catch up and make the data ready to be boarded on to the ERP systems in some fashion or the other. So similarly, this now AI, ML and Gen AI, then you have assisted AI, then you have Copilot, then you have Gen AI, and then by the time the MD has understood something, you come up with some other term. Now we have agentic AI, you can do this, you can do that, and that poor fellow is at loss. And then you, when he understands that part, you say your data is not right. Or then you are making him look at 10 different directions. So my requirement or my request is that all these technology service providers and different models, different technologies should run a scan of what this organization is, what it is capable of. Will it be only ML, or it can go up to assisted AI, or it can go to Copilot, or some aspects can go in different areas, what data is available, what is the business objective, what is the strategic objective, because I don't think one size will fit all.
Yeah.
It has to be structured to that particular organization, and it has to be structured to the organization strategy, what they intend to do. If you are totally customer focused, or your life depends on how your customer is going to behave, then you have a different system. If you are B2B, maybe you have much larger leeway to keep your customers to yourself. And if you are in like FMCG, you are dying for market share. But if you are in, say, manufacturing uranium, thorium, plutonium, you are monopoly.
Yeah.
So there I need a different model, that I need more of regulatory stuff, I need more of safety stuff. Because like in my company, if I say I have tons of data of SCADA, now that SCADA data runs on optical fibers and we store it in terabytes of server and then try to make some sense out of it, whether my pipeline is secure or not, whether if I put in 100 liters of petrol at that end, where did it reach this end? So it's a total, it's a different universe altogether. But fortunately or unfortunately, it is like targeted towards the marketing, sales, and customer side of it. I don't I don't know. There must be products, because we try to find a AIML solution for our SCADA data. We didn't find any. Everybody said no, we don't know what to do with this. So then we went to IISc. Now we are into a master research agreement with them, and then they are also breaking their heads. Those professors, what do we do with all this data? So there are different requirements of different industries. Technology is evolving. But technology has to be made more, structured to that organization rather than making the organization structured to the technology.
Yeah.
So that's my take on this. That if you really need to pull up all the industries, you need to work with them and understand their problems and understand their objectives, and structure your specific sort of whatever fancy AI name you want to give it, and then make it relevant to that industry. So that's how I look at it.
Harish?
Indian software industry is living for that.
Harish, when we were discussing this siloed and bringing together stuff, you made a point about just try moving from one cloud to another. So I have a question for you. What are the practical challenges you faced with hybrid cloud or data fabric approaches?
Yeah, I mean, there are various reasons why organizations do hybrid clouds. Mostly some of them are historical. Organization A made a choice to go with cloud A because probably it was mature at that point in time. Then things change, right? Like data localization, for example, in India, forced a lot of providers to move from cloud A to cloud B because they were not ready, for example. Now this AI specifically, and this is a very critical piece. If you look at all the offerings from all the major cloud providers, the top 3-4 of them, not all services are available in India today. When something launches, like a new model launches, you don't get it on day one in India, right? For whatever reasons, we don't know. I hope that we are not like this 5 years down the line, but we are here. So companies are forced to make this multi-cloud choices. You could be running your compute and data on a cloud provider where it is essentially cheap. The first thing that people look at is the cost of operation, because data is probably the most expensive bill on your IT budget today. Next is compute, after that is search, and then there's a long tail of everything else, right? So 90% of the companies make their choices based on cost, number one. Number two is availability, for example. Number three, of course, is the choice of the technology, right? A cloud A is, for example, very good in doing relational. Cloud B is very good in doing NoSQL. Cloud C, for example, is good in doing analytics, etc. Right? But now with Gen AI, and just give you an example, AWS on their Bedrock does not have all the models today. Something is released, it doesn't come here. Google, for example, their Gemini is available usually across everywhere else. Something is available only in the US, in India. Regulations, at least in our industry, don't allow us to send a lot of different kinds of data outside India. Even for compute, it's not allowed, right? Like payment, BFSI, most of the data cannot go outside, except something for very small, like an address where nobody cares, probably goes outside. But you cannot send credit card data, I cannot send health data, etc. outside, the jurisdiction of India. So we have to make these choices, right? We have to, for example, figure out a cloud provider that is able to provide these features here. So a lot of it is forced because of the ecosystem that we have, right? Similarly, when we run compute, and compute I also mean now there are two types of compute. Older computers running on a CPU, essentially containers. The newer one running on GPUs. Cost varies enormously because, again, this is a very hot commodity. Not everybody has it, and not everybody is able to sell it at the right, price point, etc. So it's a very difficult balance today, especially if you're a CTO or like a VP handling technology and infrastructure together, software architecture and infrastructure together, right? Because they go hand in hand. Older systems, there was somebody managing infrastructure, running servers, somebody managing software development. Then they probably spoke to each other only in the company town halls, right? But now they are coming together because you cannot build a particular application unless you know whether it is available, whether it is able to work etc. Right? So again, cross clouds have this cost optimization of data ingress, outgress. For the same byte of data going in, you're paying twice, once to go out, once to come in, right? And then if you're running a lot of data in both the places, it's very, very expensive. Third is the skill set of people, right? I mean, that's also very critical. Unless you're building your own LLMs, like you're training your own models, etc. If you're fairly just a consumer of the technology, then your team is fairly simplified. But most companies now have figured out that the normal, cloud providers with the normal models cannot suffice. And it's a very valid point, right? Yeah, I mean, the dog cannot, should wag the tail, not the other way around. Right? You cannot say, I have this LLM, so now company data sab badlo. That's not going to happen, right? We have to figure out another way to do this. Again, cloud here plays a very major factor, when it comes to capabilities, that you have built, right? And a lot of these are specific to their development environment. Like open source has been around for 25, 30 years. A lot of our systems run on them. They can run on any cloud, for example. But these specific technologies, each cloud has their own way of doing things. For example, if you go to Microsoft Azure, they have their own agentic framework. Of course, you can run generic, your frameworks also, LangChains, etc. But you need a skill set, of people to be able to do it, right? And that skill set is fairly evolving. I don't think that there are a lot of people who know how to do it well. There are people who know something about it. They can write a hello world, but they cannot run production loads on top of it, right? So then they have to learn that specific technology, right? There is a agentic framework on platform 1. The moment you move it, the team will come back and say, I need more budget because this is now technology 2. That will not work here. So all the budget that you have cut, for the CTO is now down the drain. Now we have to cut a new budget because, we have to rewrite it. So there's a lot of challenge today, and managing multi-clouds used to be a challenge, and people used it before for DRs. Like, if this center goes, I have another DR. That was multi-cloud before, or closeness to the market, especially if you're doing hyper-local, right? I mean, if I order from somewhere, I want the Bangalore server to respond rather than a Gurgaon server going all the way, coming back, etc. Right? Either it was hyper-localization geographically, or it used to be DR setup, right? Or it used to be cost. Along with that, now 2 or 3 new things have got added. Number 1, availability of technology, that particular model, technology, etc. Skill set of the people. You have trained somebody on technology A, this provider is not providing it, but your computer is running somewhere else. Again, historical reasons people have made those. And third, which is very new, which we are seeing right now, is the point that he made. Business analysts are also consumers in your technology now. Yeah. Like today, nobody is waiting for a week for somebody to come up with a canned report. People are asking, I want to be able to ask my data model, what happened to this particular region, this particular product, this color, did it sell or not? How is it happening month on month? This used to be an analytics problem, team project. Now people expect your systems, to be able to answer it, create the queries out of it, etc. run. Now that query may be running in a particular cloud where the data is not sitting, right? So you have to figure out how to get it, make it happen, etc. So I'm assuming it's great time for engineers, but not so great time for businesses, right? So again, as balance, multi-cloud, the data level is different, business viewpoint is very different, cost angle is very different, technology is very different. Yeah, very interesting times, I would put it that way.
Vinod, what have you seen about this as you go out on the field?
Yeah, so especially in a hybrid cloud environment, the biggest challenge, right, I think people get into is because they started off with certain assumptions, right? So for example, I'm building a data platform. Suddenly cloud becomes the hype, right? Everybody wanted to get into cloud platforms. Okay, no more on-prem solutions, everything. Right? So people went on to the cloud platforms. Then they realized that there's a lot of cost implications, right? When the bill came, they found that cloud was far expensive than running it on an on-prem implementation, right? So it started from there. Now, what is actually, if I have to summarize all these things, what has happened altogether, right? If I have to summarize, right, we are not clear on the strategic intent for which you are doing certain things. Sometimes it becomes a technology enthusiastic, right? That, okay, I want to try on this new technology, new thing has come in, I want to just go and do it, right? I think that becomes a thing. The capability building, right? Any organization that you're trying to build a capability, technological capabilities, especially in the data and AI space, right? We need to look at what problems we are trying to solve for the organization, right? It is very, very important. We need to start from there, okay? You need to look at whether I'm trying to, for example, I want to grow the business up in the next 20, 30 years, sorry, in the next 5 years, I want to grow the business CAGR of 30%, 40%, 50%. There are certain numbers that you have. I want to reduce the operational cost so and so percentage, right? There are certain numbers probably the business would have defined, right? Now to do that, where I need to do, what all capabilities I need to bring in, right? And what kind of innovation that is required for my organization to achieve those numbers, right? Is very, very important. Sometimes you will find the data itself is not available. Okay, we have seen that. I'll just give an example to explain what I'm trying to say. So there was a need for the business to grow at, let's say, committed to the management, 15% growth year on year. I think that's what the thing. There was a drop in actually. So growth instead it was dropping. Clients are leaving. So for a telecom company, I'm just giving an example, right? In a particular location, the customers are leaving. There is a drop in the usage of the data and voice. So everyone trying to understand why the revenue is dropping. I think the data is available. The network team, which is giving the report, they are giving 99.99% uptime of my network. Okay. Customer service team is getting complaints. There is some problem in these places. Okay. Complaints in the sense basically there are some drops, but there is no clear indication, right? It is really a problem in this location. Now, when these two people came in, marketing team is complaining or sales team is complaining, no, there is a problem in the network, my customer is not buying my connections, right? So when you looked at these data points, the two data sets, they are right in that point of view. This team is also right in that point of view, right? But when we looked at, when we integrated this data, right, I think that's where the platform capabilities come in, right? Why I'm doing certain things for what reasons, right? So when we integrated this data, so what we found is there is a reason the client, if you make a call, something the call will not establish, right? They are measuring the call drops, they are measuring the rest of the things, but the call not established itself is a problem for the customers, right? So the data is not there because you can't capture the data first of all, right? This will require enabling a different set of capabilities within the network. So they need to go 2 levels down, basically they call it as probes and everything, right? At a signaling level they need to capture, and that is very expensive to do that. Okay, now the choice of building all these things, right? Whether what I need to have. So now it comes to know whether I need to do it an on-prem solution or a cloud solution. This is a different thing because the volumes of data are so huge because it generates close to 2 terabytes of data in an hour. Okay, that's the kind of even for a one region I'm talking about, right? So all these choices that we make, right, where to put the data into it, okay, what kind of use case I want to implement, what kind of outcomes that I've expected out of this platform, that will decide exactly, right, where I need to put in. I think we're talking about the examples of regulatory constraints, all those kind of stuff. There are ways of doing things, right? There's a technology called tokenization we can do, right, which completely prevents you masking the customers and all this kind of stuff, right? There are ways of doing it, but again, what is your boundaries on which you have to do this, right? I think that is what we have to get into. Why I'm doing this? What is the benefit I need to deliver? Once we are clear on this part, I think technology aspects we can build, because technology there are plenty of choices, right? And even for choosing a technology itself, there are cost versus benefit, right? Some point in time you will find a technology is 90% mature, but not 100% that you're looking at, but still better to go with the 90% capability because you're not going to use the 10% on daily basis. You occasionally you're using it. So these are all questions, right? So this is something probably if we can get into this kind of an approach, right? Probably we can solve this problem in a much more better way.
One of the interesting things that came out as we were speaking was how we need some. It's no longer that systems are owned by different groups and their chiefs or leaders, right? Data is an example. Data is an example where Harish, you were saying how nobody's waiting for data to go out. Everybody across the enterprise wants to consume data, and so to me, it looks to me like we have to change some of the language that we use. For example, that instead of asking the question, who owns this data, we should perhaps look at the question as who's our steward or who's the custodian rather than owner, because we are moving to a model where all the guys who own all the different systems have put all their data into one place, and now somebody has to own that one place, right? And if you say own, then it has a very different meaning across the enterprise, which means you suddenly is, like I was saying, you need new words to describe that, as do you want to be a custodian, do you want to be a steward, and whatnot. So my question is, who in your organization owns that, or I know I don't want to say own any longer, but at least for a while till it becomes more popular, we'll continue to use the word own. So who owns data quality? Who owns that? Harish, you were saying that um, you abstract the data model and then the data is data, but all the operational work will be done based on the models, right? So who will make sure that the model is working correctly, the model is updated, and so on? Lakshminarayan, would you like to start?
Yeah, so I think it's a tough problem because owning the data, at least in terms of transition in the organization, I think we was pointing out earlier previously, the been that data is seen more as a internal service that you just need to enable and then get that going. Whereas now, data itself, I think there is a need to look at product specifically for just managing, orchestrating data and making sure that that itself is the true picture.
Yeah.
Previously, what we would have done is, I think someone mentioned that it's built more for analysts to work on it than anything else. Similarly, say when engineers are pulling through in whatever form for orchestrating everything, there are multiple cases where you will find that the same data in different forms is sitting across different tables and you have all kinds of duplicates.
True.
Now, when we try to use, make sense of it in agentic sort of workflows, then it becomes very complicated because then you have to label all of it and then tell what exactly is this data supposed to mean. Otherwise, it's not so much a problem of the models or the agents that you're building, but the underlying data itself is there is a lot more, say, correctness or at least establishing what is the real source of truth and where it comes through that needs to be established. So it's complicated. I don't think it's so much about one person or say individually just owning it, but just re-architecting to some extent the entire systems to be ready for this. And the other part is starting to look at product management for data itself.
Yes.
Because typically what you would find is that product is playing a role between business and say engineering to just orchestrate the entire thing. Data was typically seen a lot more as a engineering function that you just enable it and then it can go through. But now I think how important this is becoming, there is probably a lot more of a need for specifically someone to look at data itself as a product and how do you orchestrate that across all the use cases. Also own it centrally to say where all can it actually be utilized and become a single source of truth. Because now the kind of data that we are able to leverage within organizations is also becoming much more cost and all of those things aside, but customer calls that are happening, you can transcribe and get those things. Images that are coming through, content that is coming through on a platform, all of those are now a lot more usable. But now establishing all of those into a single kind of usability rather than it creating a lot more confusion because it can quickly regress into that part becomes a lot more of a problem. So how do you start thinking of that also as a product owner for data, I think is going to become more and more important.
Dipesh?
I don't want to be the owner, that's clear. That's clear. Let's keep that clear. Then we can talk. Ideally, I want to say what you're saying, no? It's everybody's responsibility, but if it's everybody's, then it's no one's. That's
Right.
why we
That's
need
true. Yeah.
we need an IT team, and CIO is definitely the owner of the data. Ingress is everybody's responsibility. The guy sitting at the POS terminal all the way till any person who is meeting the channel, meeting the customer, meeting the supplier. Ingress, everyone's responsibility, but custodian, owner, whatever you call it, there has to be central place. And this person's ability to work at an abstract level, because most of the people are in the solution level, like quickly you want to get to the solution. But you want someone who has the ability to like stay abstract and still go to the MD and get the money for that and not having any solution in hand. So that talent, that temperament, that personality is required, who can own it. Otherwise, they'll try to quickly get into solutions and then the problems will start. It's multiple systems, silos, all these are happening because someone is trying to quickly get into a solution. So that temperament and that there is a department for it, I would still feel, it's better be there.
Just to add a little bit further also on what you're saying, right? I think there is a need for a lot more education and evangelization to be done in the org also on what exactly is this going to enable. Because everyone can see the application side of it or just the solution part of it. But what is the enablement that is needed under the hood? that is a bit lost, and organizations have grown used to making decisions that our investments should be going into where the solutions are emerging, not about where the platforms are probably going to come through. That evangelization itself is a tough ask within the organization.
May I just add to this a little bit? Yeah. So when it comes to this data ownership or custodian or stewardship, all these things, I think the data ownership lies with a department which is creating the data. So for example, I may be creating this data from a sales point of view, right? Like for example, I'm ordering a new customer, right? All the data created, right? It is owned by that sales department, okay? But the same customer, when it goes to customer service, the data for customer service point of view is owned by the department. The context at which I capture the data is completely different. Okay, both has got customer name, but the contact person will be different. Okay, and when I get into a common platform, a data platform, now if I need to trace back, okay, which is the contact person I have for this particular customer, I will have 2 names. And if I go to historically, if I look at for last 5 years, I'll get 10 different names, right? So the current data which is that to be updated, right, which will remain the place. So if I all we need to solve this data problem in terms of lineage, in terms of know how the data is moved across the data supply chain within an organization, the data ownership is always fixed with the team that is creating this data. If it's a Salesforce system, which is for the CRM, for customer management, it is the Salesforce team is the owner of the data. When it comes to the data platforms, right, where we are bringing all the data and creating all those data products, whatever we are creating, okay, they are really data custodians. Yeah. They are not data owners, they are data custodians. The guy who's sitting in between is the data steward. He is the guy who's trying to understand the data, right, and what purpose I'm building those data products or no data services which need to be consumed by the end users, right? I think steward plays a critical role in doing that. So when all three works together, then only this entire data platform will deliver value to the business. If there is no ownership or if somebody is not doing his job rightly, this entire whatever technology you bring in, whatever thing you do, this will not deliver value.
There is yet another perspective to this, which is the DPDP perspective. The consumer is the owner of the data.
Yeah.
So the piece that Sudhir did beginning of the, which is it's a consent for a purpose.
Exactly.
It's a consent given for a purpose. And typically, what happens in an organization is it's not just that the point of entry. You're going to push it downstream, maybe to certain agencies as well to consume that. The fundamental aspect that comes in is there is a right that he has of that consent withdrawal as well. Now, when that consent withdrawal happens, I need to be in a position to figure out where all in my enterprise does Sudhir exist? What is the sensitive information against it that is there? And my ability to pull that out.
Yeah.
And it is pull that out at the word go, because that's the framework which DPDP is going to define. So how do I have the ability to pull that out across the downstream applications as well, not just the point of entry, but at the same time have it from an audit purpose in a regulated environment. So how do I manage that and keep that as a systemic capability becomes a critical aspect to hand.
Pranjal?
I think I largely echo what most of us have said. I think data platform for us, the team is just a custodian, and the ownership still lies to the data models, to the teams, to the views, to the products, right, who are producing and like ingesting it into the data platform. But then, as a custodian, there are responsibilities, right? I mean, there has to be layers, there has to be triggers. Then sometimes the data stops flowing, right? Data becomes stale. Some columns goes for a toss, and the downstream pipeline, downstream models, downstream reports, everything goes for a toss. And at that time, all the blame games start. So I think there has to be an equal shared responsibility between both the producer as well as the steward as to what is the role of both of them here. And then there are additional layers on top of it, right? Sometimes you need additional metadata. For example, for our onboarding flows, we have created metadata on top of our documents like the GSTs, the trade certificates, right? All the documents which we get. Because the downstream consumers, they are very, very averse to using unstructured data. So as custodians, we need to give some kind of metadata or some kind of process data on top of, or like the structure on top of unstructured data which they can use. So these are some additional responsibilities which also come on top of it. So I think in a very short, all the parties, right, have to work in conjunction to make the data platform usable.
So if I may, Nagaraj,
Yes.
the word owner is the problem.
True.
Because as managerial cadre, we have seen if you assign somebody that you are the owner, he immediately becomes very cautious about it. That I'll be questioned, I'll be hanged if something goes wrong. So the trick lies in changing that word itself. If you call him that you are the data champion of this company, then he feels
Everybody wants to.
yeah, that I am the entire burden is on my shoulders and I will take this company forward. So I fully endorse whatever everybody has said, but it cannot be a joint responsibility, because at the end of the day somebody has to be the FPR, the first person responsible. So management, if they want to question, they can't question everybody as a team. So they have to find somebody, by you find out what's the challenge. So it is better that you give him a fancy name. You are the data champion. And that fellow feels very lot of pride in it, and then he tries to solve the problem.
True.
Rather than calling him, you are the owner, and be cautious.
Given the nature of this particular discussion and the scale at which Harish and Sandhya, you operate, and Lakshmi as well, what are the kind of processes that you are building to validate this data at scale, particularly unstructured data?
Yeah. So there is a very systematic process. We have all discussed there is the custodian of data that is giving the abstraction to it, modeling in some measure, and ensuring that the data is flowing in real time, batch, as the need of the different businesses is. But as far as validation is concerned, there's a process where the business analysts, they look what is the output from this data platform, and then they also have their own query sets to run, and what we call as canvases, they report back, okay, this is how our queries perform, and the accuracy is only so much. So this validation has to be now looked at and then taken back to the source of the data, and how the massaging of data happened right from the source through the data platform. So there is what is user acceptance test, there is validations built in, there are lots of queries that are done, and then empirical models run to ensure that we are performing at that level.
Harish?
Yeah, I mean, again, process of validation, I would split it into two parts. One is your tech validation itself, right? Are you getting everything, for example? Meaning to say, if you have 5 sources of data, one could be your app, website, it could be your channel partners, it could be from dealers. Again, somebody said SCADA system, it could even be IoT system generating humongous amount of data. First part is the technical cleansing, as we call it. Are we getting what we need? Is it coming in the right format in which it's supposed to come? Are there anomalies, for example, in the data that is coming in, right? That is nothing but pure engineering, and there is no other alternative to it, right? You ensure that you are capturing enough data is coming in, and you have alarms, bells that will go off if something is wrong. For example, if I'm supposed to generate 2 terabyte of data at 8 o'clock, some day it generates half of it, somebody has to alarm, wake up and say what is happening, right? The first part is a technical, we call it plumbing. The plumbing, is the fundamental part. Plumbing has a lot of technology layers in between it, right? Data validation at the time of source, when it comes in, then some cleansing that's happening. For example, there is out of sequence data, as we call it. For example, you get a click and then you get a swipe. It's not possible to click unless you have swiped it, right? Let's say the data comes out of order. You get the swipe event, click event first, then the swipe event. So that has to be managed. So that is then the semantically getting the data right. Again, this is again a set of systems that you have to write. You'll figure out what has to come first, etc., etc. This is now slowly getting into the business model. Hey, what do I expect in this data? Right? Do I expect this sequence to come in? Like I get an order, but I don't see the cart. So there is out of sequencing, etc. Right? So that's the second part of it. First is the technical part, whether the plumbing is right. Second is the semantic part, where the third part is in the data, what are we getting it? There could be anomalies. For example, you expect a certain buy to happen in a certain area. Like for example, you expect that during the tax season, a lot of people will buy health insurance, right? Because whatever ATC, CD, etc., etc. Suddenly you see a spike in motor insurance, which you usually see during Diwalis, because people buy cars during Dashera, vagara. We see a spike back then. So we have seasonality of data also coming in. So whether the seasonality of data is matching with whatever you're getting in also gives you a fairly good understanding of what to validate. Suddenly some event happens and then you're trying to figure out, what is happening. Like in dengue season, I expect a lot of people to come in to do some claim data, right? Is it relating, co-matching, etc. That's a business rule part of the validation, that we do. Then the last part of it that usually works well is, again, this goes back a little bit of ownership data, but then not fully there because we don't open the question again, is there could be multiple people gathering the data, right? For example, health insurance is gathering health data. Somebody is added in life insurance, a claimant, right? Somebody who's nominee. Suddenly the nominee doesn't match the wife or the husband, then somebody has to figure out to say what is happening. Did you get it right or did you get it right? Now both people can say, hey, I have generated, I owned it. No, it's wrong. You cannot do that. Somebody in a survey said, I smoke twice a day, but his declaration is that I'm a non-smoker. Now both people can't be right? Because they said I captured this data, I'm the owner of data. So I don't really believe federated ownership of the data, I produced, I own it, is wrong in a way. And we allude more towards the centralized product data platform guys, where somebody says, I will tell you across the system. So I understand every business line. End of the day, I make the interpretation. There is a team that interprets the data, holds what we call the single source of truth. That team's sole job is to ensure that irrespective of who is capturing what data, end of the day, they create a sacrosanct single source of truth for everybody else to consume. Why? Because if your consumer is coming in, some genius is looking at this data, giving a wrong answer. For example, a customer may call in or app to say, I broke my leg, I'm admitted, can I use an AC room? Typical health insurance. Now you cannot have wrong data that says, sorry, you can't. Then I'm really doing wrong with the customer because, my data is garbaged inside, right? So again, when you look at validation, tech, plumbing, then semantic, after that is business rules, after that is cleansing or a single source of truth of data, etc. This is the process of going in. Coming out is very clear. You have to write the right kind of getters or the right kind of APIs, as we call it technically. It could be different consumers. Today in GenAI, it doesn't have to be an API. It can be an Excel upload, export. It can be a query that comes up. It can be somebody answering on MCP. So it doesn't matter what the consumer is. So this validated data again has to come out very clearly. Periodically, we validate it, just to ensure that we are also right. For example, if we did 3 surveys, I want to be sure that, I have consistent data at my side, that the place where the customer is saying the same pin code is in the place where the car is also registered. It cannot be 2 separate places, because if you're not in a separate place, if the customer has chosen, say, RSA, which is roadside assistance, I need to know that I can reach the customer in the place he or she is, right? Then I can't have wrong data, because then I'm not doing right when the guy presses the button. I need TOTAC. I cannot say, sorry, TOTAC will not come to you, because I really don't know whether you're here or here, right? So if you have to do right by the consumer, all this back-end, whatever, this heavy lifting has to be done by the company, right? And various teams are involved. The engineering teams are involved in the pipelining. The product teams are involved in semantically labeling it, validating it appropriately. Of course, all of this run in systems. So engineering is always involved across. There are doers in the system. But the people who tell you what to do, right? I think they are different at different places. Again, they both have to work together. And we have seen this work fairly if this works. If it breaks, then we have seen things go a little bit, heavy here and there. And again, somebody has to keep the lights on. There's an engineer in the night, 3 o'clock, waiting, seeing what is happening. I think that's engineers' lives anyway.
One of the things that's obvious now is that while our approaches may differ from company to company with what we do, the choices we made might be different and so on. One thing that's clear is that all of us have processes in place, and in general, process means some friction. Even the most well-oiled process has some friction on it. So, and friction means time, delay, all of the cascading effects. So how do we balance the speed of innovation that is required against the rigor that is required for data trustworthiness? Sudhir, you want to start off?
Yeah, so coming again from a typical organizational point of view, data ownership, like data is the new gold or whatever is being said. So
The new oil.
New oil. Okay.
Very
So-
apt for Petronet.
Yeah. So the challenge again remains that if you ask him to own, it is a challenge. If you ask him to generate, he is ready to do that. But don't ask me why it is working this way. So and then at least in certain government type companies or PSUs or 51% ownership, data also means power. So people seldom want to let go of the data because if the data goes, then mere ko puchega kaun? So that challenge also comes. So it is technology is doing a good job of aggregating all the data and spreading it all across. So, and this AI ML models also do a wonderful job of it. But yes, there are frictions. There are systems which clash when you try to ask everybody to put in a central place. And at times, due to this clash, it may even lead to data poisoning. People might say, ki, I am being forced to give away this data, so let me do some hanky-panky with the data here and there, and let the central guys try to resolve it. So it has to be done in a very delicate fashion, in a very collaborative environment to really have the data hygiene all across. Otherwise, if you have a disgruntled employee at your front end customer, he might feed in wrong data that anyway I'm going to leave this company in 5 months, 5 weeks, 2 weeks. Let the data go haywire. So I think he was very right that you have to validate it at different stages, because you can't. You are expecting all employees are loyal to you. All employees are doing a fantastic job. It's not. That's not real world. So we have to be, as an enterprise, as a CIO, CISO, or whatever, he has a very tough task at his hands, ensuring data hygiene and data actually staying safe and then not getting poisoned and not getting hacked, and all those things do figure. So yeah, this is the, I think, heart of all your AI ML things. It should be taken proper, handle with care sort of thing.
Dipesh?
If I have to take a side, I would take side on rigor, because a lot of downstream implications. You don't want to go fast and then create chaos. Because downstream implications are huge. Even if I am slow, it's okay. But if you want to fix a little higher up, I think in the culture, if you split here, avoid temptation, because data is a greed and temptation in front of you. Like you don't want to not use it.
Yeah.
With all the governance that is required, right? Confidentiality, privacy, DP, everything. So as long as the culture is कि यार ये है, but use करने के लिए you need some time. You need to build the framework around it. So culturally fix the no greed, no temptation. Don't eat all. Keep everything that you need. But go down and take a rigorous path. Process doesn't slow you down. Eventually it speeds you up.
Yeah.
For the time being, it slows you down, which is fine.
Yeah.
I would side on rigor than speed.
So it's one thing to talk about the trade-off between productionizing velocity and rigor, but what would your stance be if when it comes to experimentation?
Closed loop betas are all fine. Okay, so but we go live too soon. I think in the digital world, it's okay to go live soon because there's not
Right.
much to lose.
Right.
But in your high stakes business processes, closed loop betas are sometimes not enough. You need to go step by step to go very.
Agreed. Pavan?
So similar. So I have a slightly different perspective here, because there is a lot of focus, energy, attention currently on getting some ROI out of. Already a lot of money has been sunk into either AI investments or so-called AI investments. People thinking that they're investing in AI, but they really have no clue. But they want ROI, right? So give me a company in the last 1 year who has not done at least upskilling of their employees on some AI tool. Now it has to pay off, which means people have to experiment. But the problem now is how do you pick and choose which of these, say, 10 initiatives that are on your table as a decision maker, which needs to be flagged off, which can sleep for a while, like you said, and wait for the rigor to kick in. a very common choice people are making is exactly what you said. What is least risk for me and I can implement, and if it fails and bombs, it's not going to throw an egg on my face. What I have found works a little more better is when the decision maker has a little nuanced approach to it. What I've seen the best decision makers do is to take a complexity versus the impact for me as a business sort of an analysis. Complexity is an internal assessment. Do I have my data ready? It is a very, very nuanced call that you honestly have to take. Is my team really equipped enough to pull? I might dream the moon, but do I have the team to actually deliver it on the ground? Is it too complex enough? Can I have a owner, a champion, championing the word champion, who can take this through from day zero to the time it really is? There some guy like that in the company? It's an honest internal assessment. And there is an external assessment as well. If I don't do it, which is where most of us are very scared, if I don't do it and a competitor does it, and there is a significant customer move, or the competitor does it and they get a significant cost advantage, and I lose out, and I'm sitting on the sidelines and I'm completely lost. So when the best decision makers do this sort of an analysis, they don't run after every new thing, because they do an internal assessment. Is it right for me? And is this an experiment that worth pursuing forward? But they are also honest about the external things as well. When you look at, everybody is building a chatbot, so let me build that. But is it really moving revenue to you? Is it something that you need to put 10 people around it and put deadlines and then you rush them to throw a product out? Not really. You can relax, and there's no need to. Every AI thing doesn't need to come out the next month, right? That's one part. The second part, though, is how do you composite this team is also a big challenge. How do you, the team that is executing this experiment that you flagged off, it more and more what we are finding is a mix. What used to be, this is an AI/ML initiative, but more and more the initiatives that actually work are driven not by the AML guy, but the business person, the one that who owns the ultimate KPI. That's what it burns for them, that if I do this, my KPI is going to improve from X to Y. They are the owners. When they drive it, that's when, those are the quickest, the quickest way to figure out which experiment to run is when a business guy comes to you and tells you, this is my problem, I want to solve it at any cost. AI, no AI. Forget about that, but I need to solve this.
Yeah.
And then there is an AI team that's built up. That's the experiment that's going to work. Not the experiment which is pushed by the AI guy who thinks there is the latest fancy model or something like that. But as a decision maker, I think that the nuance is between understanding your complexity versus, the external facing. Is it really your problem, or you're just doing it just to sort of tick a box? And you have the internal capability. If both of them are then checked, still there's a probability of the possibility of assembling a wrong team. In which case, I would pick the one where the business decision maker is if he comes and tells me that this is my problem and I want you to solve it with AI, that's the one that I would sort of flag off.
Super. Pranjal?
Yeah, so I think one of the most common challenges is keeping pace with the business, and then that's when the trade-off happens. That do you want to trade on something very quickly, or do you want to shoot for longevity, right? And typically, as engineers or as ML folks, right, we want to build something which is robust, which will test the test of which will go through the test of time, and but then always it should not come at the cost of business, the competitor taking over business or you going slow. So I think creating that balance of having the right experimentation framework versus unblocking the business is very, very crucial. And I think one thing we as what is custodians of data or as drivers of data literacy, right, in the company, take that responsibility of whenever we call an experiment a success or failure, it has to be data backed. There has to be, it has, as humans, one of the most common problems is we go by a hunch, right? We'll say, okay, this will work, this will not work. And when you look at the data, it could go both ways. So to get that unbiased decision, right, of whether your experimentation was success or failure, I think we are still trying to solve that problem.
Yeah.
We are somewhere there, but I think it's a journey. Again, because there are so many things, so many outside factors, right, which basically your team A would be doing some campaign, your team B is doing something else, and they're actually messing up your overall experiment, and then you are coming up with a different, a type C kind of conclusion. So I think to disambiguate a lot of these scenarios, it is very, very crucial that whenever you are experimenting, there has to be a proper framework, there has to be a proper SOP that how are you running it, and that's when your decision is more intelligent and you actually shoot for longevity at the same time.
Thank you.
I think very
We
well,
are-
well said. Sorry, just one comment. The data-driven approach is not usually followed by data team to prove that their models work. Actually,
Oh, we all of us love saying that we are data driven, but we only like the data that
in our
supports us.
dashboard, we just put just like a feedback, 5-star system, and we decided anything that does not get a 4-star, all those reports are gone.
Correct.
60% of the reports are gone.
Suresh, yes, please.
But it is, say, like the Narasimha Avatar, no?
Yeah.
When Prahlad's father was asking him, where is Vishnu? Where is Vishnu? Vishnu used to be worrying because Prahlad says Vishnu is here means he should be there, right? Similarly, I don't know which question is going to come to me. So for every question, I was trying to prepare an answer.
And I was careful not to throw questions. Having said that,
I want to take a couple of few questions that was there and try to look at all of them from a different perspective. Okay.
Suresh, I will just take 1 minute.
Yes.
We are on time, so we will do a clockwise. What was the one thing that struck you in today's discussion? And when we come to you, Suresh, you can expound.
But then 1 minute is not enough for me.
No, you will be an exception, but for everyone else, it will just be maybe a minute.
Yeah, so at least from my perspective, when I just hear everyone, it turns out to be that the problems I think that all organizations are facing are similar.
Yes.
So it's not as if, I think that way, whatever it is happening on, say, data for AI overall is a big leveler where no one is ahead. Everyone is just starting pretty much at the same time. And the other part is, I think, from all the points, I would say that one thing that is coming out clearly is that many of the cases, probably AI is coming out to be a place where solutions are going looking for problems
Yes.
rather than the other way, and that's a very dangerous thing. So
Absolutely.
thoughtfulness on putting that together, I think, is something that will be useful. Which, if I was just trying to tie around, because there are a lot of things that are going in different ways. I think technically people are aware what needs to be done, but how do you synthesize and bring it together for the organization to create effectiveness?
Thank you. Dipesh?
I had fun. There were real, seems like practitioners who actually done it, with their hands. So that experience I could feel. What's heartening to feel is if you solve these hard problems, yes, it's hard, but the impact can be really high. With that hope, I think we should move forward.
Sudhir?
Going by the discussions, the knowledge inputs that have come in, AI at the rate of work, there is, I feel there's no other alternative other than, catching the AI train or bus. If you don't do that, the organizations who are laggards or who don't adopt, as she was saying, the latest version, and that's the worry every company has, which is the latest version. So,
At this point in time.
so I also discussed with Professor Sandhya of Kellogg School of Management, and he keeps on saying that it is all layered. So you have to, as per your own systems, you have to layer it, and that's what people here were also discussing. What's your objective? What's your requirement? What's your output? So it's not necessary that you directly jump to some agentic or some fancy AI.
Yeah.
You have to know yourself, and then you have to find a technology service provider who knows you and knows your problem and understands, not trying to push you the latest genie out of the bottle. So, and going by the discussions, that point is validated that there are solutions for all different types of problems. The user and the developer has to marry together and identify the problem and the solution, the right solution, and then scale it up, because AI is not the end. Maybe after 5 years down the line, there will be something else, and then they'll say, you are stuck in AI? Oh, this is the new thing. So that's evolution. Thank you.
Vinoth?
I think aligning your platform capabilities, data AI, what you're building, right, with your business alignment. I think this is very, very important if you really want to be successful in delivering value from the platform that you're building. That's one thing. And to enable that, the capability that you build should be cost effective. Okay. Many programs that with the GenAI experiment that has gone till now, right? It could not get into production because of the cost of doing that use case itself is very expensive, right? And what value it is delivering, right? I think prioritization of the use cases, but the capabilities will become very, very important. But third thing is that if you want to talking about innovation that need to come in whatever we do, uh, the entire process methods, the measurements, right, the governance need to be in place. Okay, there should be clear operating procedures, set for your entire data and AI operations. Very, very important. When I say data and AI operations, you should be measurable, right? Whether how the model is performing, right, or what the data quality, all the dashboards, everything need to be available. Unless you have this governance in place, the flexible data platform in place, and add new capabilities as needed, how flexible it is, that will make the entire journey, right, of the data into much more successful in any organization.
Thank you. Harish?
Yeah, I mean, first is, I think the biggest takeaway for me, fairly senior leaders from very diverse set, it's not skewed towards one type of business. Seems like everybody sort of already fairly understand what AI can do, what AI cannot do. So it isn't like 3 years ago people used to even figure out, okay, what is it doing? Can I use it? Can I not use it? I think there's a fairly good understanding across the industries, which means it's here to stay and people are investing in it. I think that's the one takeaway that I very clearly have. So it's not new. People have different points of view to understand it, but people fairly understand what is needed. What I figured out and what everybody is talking about is everybody is looking for outcomes now. They're not and they're not shy of investments. They're not saying I'll not do it because I don't understand it. Everybody is saying I want to use it. I am to a fairly different degrees in the different organizations, but we're trying to look for what outcomes that we can get. Somebody's getting outcome A, somebody's getting outcome B. People are very outcome driven. Now people are looking for ROI is a very loose term, but outcome is a fairly bigger term in terms of business, right? How different people are able to get outcomes, out of this, benefits, out of this, and yeah, fairly good points of view. These are the 2-3 key takeaways that I had today.
Siddhesh?
The complexity conundrum over the last few years has very significantly gone up. The hybrid piece that Harish spoke about. Also from a workflow perspective, when you look at an enterprise, there will be elements which are the fixed rules-based engine. Insurance, for example, is a very extensively from lead to a policy issuance is a rules-based engine. There are insurance companies that issue almost 85-90% of their policies on a straight-through process. And that's a rules-based engine, very, very powerful, out there to stay. There are elements of what you call as deterministic aspects. So simple NLP-based single-step deterministic aspects that they are also out there to stay. There is a new animal that's coming, which is the agentic piece, which is the non-deterministic part of it. Now, it's not about painting the town red, but it's about how do I use it where it really adds value. Yeah. Now, I have an organization that needs to cater to all of these things together. How do I now create an AI-ready data foundation that's going to be able to address each element of the business need that comes in? And how do I do it is the name of the game.
Pranjal?
I think I'll echo to one of the points what Harish said. Like as a one of the key takeaways, right? And what we are also investing in is shipping faster, right? How we can get the right outcomes or a better outcome for the company and for end consumers faster. And for that, I think all of us probably are heavily investing in our own organizations to enable engineers, to enable teams, right? To build, to have AI as a co-pilot and build along with it, not like force-fit AI everywhere. I mean, it's about taking the best decision interest of the company with AI as our assistant. So I think it's an honor to be among a set of folks who are working in this area and doing leading the forefront of it.
Thank you. Suresh, instead of 1 minute, you have 2 minutes.
See, if you look at MIS, prescriptive and predictive and prescriptive, that's if you look at that as a maturity model.
Yeah.
At the MIS level, today the chat GPTs have made you use chat GPT for the MIS level. I want to put an Excel file and say who is my top 10 customers. You don't want to use chat GPT for that. Yeah. That's on MIS, right? You need to use this at the predictive and prescriptive level only. So if organizations are very clear, what is my MIS need, what is my predictive and prescriptive need, they can very clearly understand where they have to use AI, where they don't want to use AI, and go with what standards are there. Another thing that we spoke about data, right? Since I've seen data for the last 38 years now, transaction systems made mistakes and we started building cleansing capability in the aggregation level. But that should not be the case. We should go back and fix the transaction
Yeah.
systems. The transaction system should generate data
Right.
because that is the seed information. Your middle layer can derive data. It can derive data out of the seed information, but seed information has to be correct. If that is not coming from the transaction system correctly, that needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
But we are not doing that. Because that is somebody else's responsibility, this is somebody else's responsibility. You say the data comes wrong, but I know what should be the logic, so I'll fix it here and take it forward. You will never touch that.
Right.
But that data now going to AI engineers in a different route, you will have problems. Right. So we need to make sure that at the middle layer, if there are problems, fix the lower layer. Don't try to fix it in the middle layer. These are the two things which is very important. If you approach your whole data management, because we used to have what is called master data management as a practice
Yes.
one day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If I want to specify age, this is how you should specify age.
Correct.
If you want to specify pin code, this is how you should specify pin code. That comes from a central repository who somebody owned. If that practice is there, we should not have this cleansing requirement at all, because your data that is coming there has to be proper. So we should go back to MDM as a concept and see whether it is being followed properly. Then come and see where I want to use AI, where I will go with standard MIS.
Yeah.
If that is approach is taken, and I think the management will also be clear. I think the board can play with ChatGPT with Excel files,
Yeah.
but tech need not spend the time there.
Very nicely put, Suresh. Thank you so much. I now regret not having asked you next.
A lot of the problems are actually because of the board playing with ChatGPT.
Oh, absolutely. You should. Yeah, I mean, I think Suresh and I have been hit by it far more than anybody else in this. I can bet on it, even though I don't know your specific circumstances.
No, I think that is that these are bruises everybody of us has carried.
Yeah.
So yeah, great conversations, and for me they were converging towards having a very robust data platform. And what that means is also talking to what you just said, that the standardization and the understanding of the data is part and parcel of this data platform.
Yeah.
Because when you are dealing with data at scale coming from varied sources, you have to put in the standardization layer in the data platform itself. So that is a key part that is being practiced. And also business outcomes. That is what is driving everything that we are doing with data and using AI just as a tool. It's just a mechanism on how we are leveraging this data, and we have to be very careful on tagging the data so that PII data and access controls are really robust for accessing this data. And something about hybrid cloud, there was a great discussion that Harish had. Wanted to also paint the picture that it's not one cloud provider to another, it's also the aspect of having on-prem and using a cloud provider and bursting only for scale. So as to make your costs
Absolutely.
work for you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Suresh, by the way, is an expert in managing in-prem and cloud. In fact, multiple clouds. Our core enterprise is on Oracle, but our data platform is on GCP, and we do a couple of application-related stuff that goes out of AWS. So it's all kinds of stuff, and he's the guy who orchestrates all that for us. Pavan.
So for me, synthesizing all of this, I think there are two key ideas. One thing is that broadly everybody has acknowledged that AI is there to stay. That there is no. This was a question when this is my 10th year in building AI systems on production grade AI systems. When we started, this question was always asked, mostly by folks from the business on the production line. Our first implementation was building a computer vision system for a hand wash manufacturer, and the biggest question is, why really are you bringing this to me? And I can at a fraction of a cost put a guy there and do the same job. Today those questions aren't asked, which means there is a broad scale democratization of what it can do for you. Those questions aren't asked. Side effect is, of course, CEOs are also using ChatGPT, and that's causing other problems. So that's one. There's convergence across industries that there are business outcomes which can be met if you use AI. But what was very heartening for me is the realization that this is not a magic bullet. There's still a data layer that needs to be carefully managed. There need to be owners. There need to be mechanisms in place for this layer which is sitting on top to actually work. It needs a robust underlying infrastructure. It is also heartening that not many are still not thinking of that layer That because this is the main pain point that I used to raise everywhere. That this is okay, application is okay, but who's going to worry and lose sleep over the data that's running underneath? Garbage in is going to be garbage out. Even if you can put a polished UI on top, that if it gives you a wrong answer, then that polish is not going to. So that I think is a great thing that I take back. That there are people like me who worrying about the bottommost layer, want to put ownership, want to put validation, all the non-sexy things that actually are needed for the thing on top to work is not like an isolated problem. There's so much buzz around AI, forgetting that the underlying layer needs to also grow up to rise up and meet that challenge.
True.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. I know that we ran a little bit over time, but I should also tell you that that's a reflection of how interesting I found the discussion and therefore did not look at the clock. So my apologies for the delay. Please join us after this discussion. Please, there's a refresher and then there's dinner. So please join us. Thank you so much again for being with us. This is the first roundtable, Data Without Chaos, and we hope that with the help of this group, there's going to be a little less chaos and a little more data. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.